Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The chief executive of Sainsbury's has insisted that the firm's planned merger with Asda will not lead to closures or job losses in stores, but could lead to lower prices. The deal, worth £10 billion, needs approval from the Competition and Markets Authority before it goes ahead. Our business editor, Simon Jack, takes a closer look.
Lower prices for everyday items. That's the promise on offer to customers of both Sainsbury and Asda as they laid out their plans for one of the biggest retail mergers in decades. The prospective boss of the new giant said its increased buying power would mean a better deal for customers.
Ultimately, we'll pass those benefits back to our customers in the form of lower prices. And what we're talking about today is that we'd expect the price of everyday items, not all items, but everyday items in the round to fall by 10%. And that's what we'd aim to do.
A combination of the second and third largest supermarkets will create a retailing powerhouse. Currently, the two companies have a total of 2,800 stores in the UK, employing a giant workforce of 330,000 people. Together, they'd account for over 31% of the UK grocery market, knocking long-time leader Tesco into second place.
Sometimes attack is the best form of defence, and many see this bold move as a response to threats in the marketplace from the discounters Aldi and Lidl, from Tesco's move into wholesaling by buying Booker, and of course Amazon, which has set its sights on the UK grocery market. The question is, will this bigger is better, bigger is safer strategy be enough to convince competition authorities, suppliers and of course customers?
Both brands will continue to trade side by side, although competition authorities may force some sites to be sold when they dominate certain areas like here in Keighley, where customers are unsure how it'll work.
I think it's a bit strange actually, because they're completely at different ends of the market. I just wonder which way they're going to go.
Not quite sure how it's going to work, quite honestly, especially with them being so close to each other. And in most towns they do have both, don't they?
They've said prices will drop on popular lines by about 10%, so it can only be a good thing for the consumer.
There's another bold promise. Although some may be sold, no stores will be closed or in-store jobs lost. That's left some suppliers fearing that they will bear the brunt of any cost savings.
If there's no store closures and no cost cutting by Sainsbury's or Asda, it's the suppliers that are going to have to pay the difference. And that will mean that suppliers will have to consolidate, suppliers will have to lose jobs, suppliers will have to close factories, and that will leave less choice for consumers in the end.
This deal is far from done. It will attract intense scrutiny from the competition watchdog, but its audacity is proof of just how much the retail landscape has changed. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Well, moving on now, there are fears that stores could close and jobs be lost if a mega merger between Sainsbury's and Asda goes ahead. The bosses initially insisted that there would be no closures, but the Competition and Markets Authority may force them to offload stores. Well, there are concerns too that the company would be too powerful and that suppliers may be squeezed too far. Here's our business editor, Joel Hills.
It's a union of two of the best-known names in retail, and if Sainsbury's and Asda are allowed to join forces, they will become Britain's largest supermarket group. The merger's being presented as a match made in heaven, one in which everyone wins: staff, shareholders, suppliers and shoppers.
By bringing the companies together, we can deliver benefits in flexibility of shopping, but also other benefits. As I say, buying scale means that we'll be able to reduce our buying prices, and ultimately those prices will be passed on to customers in the form of lower prices on everyday items.
If this merger proceeds, then the UK's big four supermarket groups would become the big three, and Sainsbury's Asda would be the biggest of them, operating 2,800 stores, employing 330,000 people, and with almost £1 in every three spent on groceries in the UK passing through its tills. With greater size comes greater power, perhaps too much power. The Competition and Markets Authority could block this deal.
Asda and Sainsbury's will argue that there's plenty of competition out there. In the last decade, Aldi and Lidl have come of age. And it's true that when it comes to price, the discounters have been terrific for consumers, but not when it comes to choice. The average supermarket like this one carries 30,000 product lines. The average Lidl carries 2,000.
Bigger means more buying power. Sainsbury's and Asda say they'll cut the price of everyday items by 10%, but suppliers are likely to resist.
I don't see how they can offer a 10% discount based upon simply pressurising suppliers into dropping their prices 10%. That can't happen with what's on offer here.
The city loves this tie-up. Sainsbury's shares soared by 15% today. Before the market opened, the Sainsbury's boss was at the stock exchange waiting to be interviewed.
We're in the money, the sky is sunny. Let's lend it, spend it, send it rolling along.
He is a shareholder. For now, he's right.
It's unfortunate I was caught singing. As I say, I was relaxing at the time. This is an incredibly stressful day. Maybe it was an unfortunate choice of song, but nevertheless, this is great news for customers. It's great news for employees, and it's also great news for shareholders.
If it's waved through, Sainsbury's Asda promises no store closures and sees itself as a gentle giant. Others fear its size will leave it free to charge whatever prices it wants. John Hills, ITV News.
Now, it's a £7 billion deal which could create a supermarket, a company so big that it takes nearly £1 in every 3 that we in the United Kingdom spend on groceries. Sainsbury's planned merger with Asda is designed to help fight off competition from cut-price stores such as Aldi and Lidl and the online grocery giants like Amazon. Our business editor Siobhan Kennedy went to meet Sainsbury's boss to talk about whose interests will really be served by the deal.
As shopping bills go, it's a whopper. Sainsbury's confirming it will snap up Asda in a deal that values its closest rival at more than £7 billion. If the acquisition goes through, the pair will leapfrog Tesco to become the biggest force in the UK's cutthroat supermarket sector, with just over a third of the overall market.
But this deal is as much about looking in the rear view mirror as it is about trying to play catch up with Tesco. Aldi and Lidl are nipping at the supermarket giant's heels, grabbing market share with their cut-price business model. And at the same time, Amazon has entered the fray with its slick online delivery, even using drones, which threatens the very survival of massive brick-and-mortar stores like this one. With this deal, Sainsbury's is hoping to clamp down on both.
Today, Sainsbury's boss, Mike Coop, who'll run the enlarged group, was out selling the deal.
How does bricks and mortar buying more bricks and mortar, more floor space, help you go after Aldi, Lidl or Amazon? This feels like a very old school deal.
This is about adapting to the market conditions, to adapt our space, to face into the changing nature of retail shopping. And we will provide better value to our customers through lower prices, through better ranges, through better flexibility in the way that customers shop with us through this transaction. Customers now are getting increasingly impatient, and what's today's wow will become tomorrow's everyday expectation.
The big selling point of the deal is the promise of 10% price cuts on everyday goods, if it can be achieved.
You're keeping the offices open, you're saying you won't have to close any stores. Doesn't this just mean bearing down and squeezing the supplier because of your size?
Well, all we're expecting is that if Sainsbury's or Asda is buying the same item at a different price, we just bring those prices together, which we don't think is unreasonable. We would expect them to benefit from the scale of the two organisations. Remember, we'll be buying twice as much stuff as we are today, and we would expect to pass those benefits back to our customers.
Yet caught in between interviews, it seems it might not just be suppliers or customers who'll benefit.
We're in the money, the sky is sunny. Let's lend it, spend it, send it rolling along.
Now you were, I think you're aware, heard on microphone earlier singing "We're in the money." Are you personally in the money as a result of this deal? What's in it for you?
Well, I'm a big shareholder in Sainsbury's. My shareholding is a matter of public record. You can see from the accounts how many shares I own. It's unfortunate I was caught singing. As I say, I was relaxing at the time. This is an incredibly stressful day, maybe it was an unfortunate choice of song, but believe me, doing this on the record over and over again is a significant impact on me as an individual, but nevertheless, this is great news for customers, it's great news for employees, and it's also great news for shareholders.
Mr Coop later formally apologised in a statement for any offence he may have caused. But there will no doubt be other tricky moments along the way. The deal will be scrutinised for one by the competition watchdog, who may yet force the supergroup to sell off stores in areas where Asda and Sainsbury's currently overlap.
Given the size of the two businesses coming together, there have to be job cuts.
What we said today is that as a result of this transaction, we don't anticipate any stores will close, and the vast majority of colleagues in both businesses work in our shops.
Customers too seemed sceptical today.
There's not enough competition with supermarkets as it is. I can't believe that they'll get away with it, to be honest. Because
do you not think that then it will help to drive down prices, which will ultimately be good for consumers?
I don't think so, because less competition doesn't benefit consumers. More competition benefits consumers, so I don't think so.
Near where I live, there's an Asda and a Sainsbury's next to each other. Not going to keep them both open, surely, but they're saying they are this morning, but yeah, we'll see how that goes.
There's no doubt this is a seismic shake-up in Britain's supermarket sector. Shareholders certainly welcome the news. The deal is due to close next year, but does big necessarily mean better when it comes to seeing off the competition?
Siobhan Kennedy reporting.
And we'll talk about a kind of reset in immigration policy later in the programme. Now, back in 1999, there was a takeover that was meant to be a game changer for British retailing. The US giant Walmart took over Asda. It was going to be transformative, slotting Asda into a global superpower. It would have buying power and all the grit of a proven US overlord. Well, that was 19 years ago, but like so many takeovers, it's not delivered the much hyped promise. So now another game-changing takeover is in the works. Sainsbury's takeover of Asda from Walmart. It's easy to see why Walmart might want to make a dignified retreat from its UK adventure right now. They face a stiff challenge from Amazon back home. And supermarkets here have overbuilt and face intense low-price competition. But that still leaves the question for us. Do we want a number 2 player in an important sector to take over the number 3 player? Our business editor Helen Thomas reports.
Call it Asbury, call it Asda, it's certainly an unusual deal. It's about 15 years since the last big UK grocery merger. Morrison's, then the 6th largest food retailer, bought Safeway, the 4th biggest.
Safeway, Safeway, Safeway!
Since then, the rise of the discounters has challenged the sector's giants. And there's online delivery, still a small slice of the UK market, but one that holds new threats from powerful new rivals.
When Morrison's bought Safeway, the regulator was pretty clear. Any deal between the biggest 4 supermarket groups wasn't going to work. Yes, you can sell stores at a local level to maintain customer choice, but still that wouldn't alleviate concerns at the national level. Sainsbury's and Asda are betting that enough has changed in grocery shopping for the regulator to change its mind.
This was the market at the beginning of 2003. The big 4 had 2/3 of the market. Aldi and Lidl had barely 3% between them. And here is the latest data. The big 4 still have over 2/3 of the market. But behind them is a bigger crop of fast-growing, keenly priced rivals. As they announced the deal, the supermarkets were also making their pitch to regulators. Asda's relative strength in the north and Sainsbury's in the south could mean less overlap, important for a regulator that tends to focus on concentration in local shopping areas. And savings from the deal, mainly from getting a better deal from suppliers, would be used to lower prices, the company said, around 10% off many everyday items. But the Competition and Markets Authority will look at the national picture as well as locally.
Are Aldi and Lidl now big enough to count as national rivals to the likes of Sainsbury's? Do their smaller stores compete for customers wanting to do a one-stop weekly shop? And the CMA could also look at the potential squeeze on suppliers from a bigger buyer in town, particularly where lower investment could mean less innovation or less choice for consumers.
UK supermarkets have faced new rivals, tough competition and rising costs. But it's not yet clear that their traditional dominance has been shaken enough for regulators to let the biggest get bigger still.
Helen Thomas there. Well, with me in the studio, Natalie Berg, a retail analyst who's writing a book about Amazon, and Bill Grimsey, who's the former chief executive of both Iceland and Wix. Very good evening to you. Natalie, just why do they want to do this?
Well, this merger is all about scale and survival. Supermarkets have seen their profit margins deteriorate in recent years. They face rising costs. Inflation in particular has been a real headache. And at the same time, they faced increased competition from the likes of Aldi and Lidl, and increasingly Amazon. So they're left with little choice but to consolidate.
No one buys groceries from Amazon, really, do they? I
Not
mean,
yet.
a tiny little bit, but it's not really very much, is it? Is Amazon actually a factor in the background here?
Long term, it absolutely is. I think they're trying to future-proof their business against Amazon. But you're absolutely right. At the moment, Amazon has a negligible share of the grocery market, but they're still having a very big impact on driving change. They're making supermarkets invest in things like getting rid of checkouts and invest in same-day delivery.
They've got some stores in the States.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bill, I always thought it was that the scale thing was to satisfy chief executives like yourself, because it was much nicer to have a big business than a smaller one. But they seem to be saying this really drives down costs.
Well, this is a defence move. It's not an offence move, as Natalie's just said. Sainsbury are being squeezed by a resurgent Tesco, being run by a very good management team, and Walmart have been here for 19 years, and it really is not their A game. Their A game's in the States, and we talked about Amazon. They are seriously worried in the States about Amazon. So this is a good way out for them, and the geography fits. And as far as the UK is concerned, a big number one, because it will be, versus Tesco, is going to be two giants slogging it out on price and service to get.
So do you think it actually will be competitive? I mean, you know, you'll have two bigger players. You'll have one very big player, Tesco, and now an even bigger player, Sainsbury Asda. Should the competition authorities say, yeah, we're fairly comfortable about that because two giants is enough to keep?
Well, the competition authorities blew it with the Booker-Tesco acquisition.
Right, this was wholesaler, so that was kind of
but
more
that was
vertical.
A vertical, and this is horizontal.
Yeah,
but,
two competitors.
But I'm sure that Tesco will play that card, but I can't see them getting in the way of this. They may well ask them to dispose of stores where there's two side by side and that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, this will go through late 2019, and it will be good for customers, and it will be good in the long term for the market, but it isn't going to be good for the suppliers.
Well, I was going to say that. OK, so if I was a competition authority, I might be worried about the customers. That's what everybody assumes their job is. But you also have to worry about the suppliers, not just the big ones, but the smaller suppliers who have fewer and fewer choices. Should we be more worried about suppliers, Natalie, or about customers when it comes to these competition?
No, I think you've hit it. It's spot on. I mean, the customers will benefit. Sainsbury's said this morning that prices will be reduced by about 10%. But it's the suppliers who will be squeezed because somebody has to pay for this price investment. Sainsbury's said this morning that 85% of the products on their shelves come from just 100 suppliers. These are the large multinationals, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola. They'll benefit by having additional volume by selling through both Sainsbury's and Asda, but of course there'll be increased pressure to offer better prices.
Yeah, do you think the suppliers should be worried about this? I mean, will they be lobbying the CMA saying, look, guys, don't be ridiculous, we're hurting here?
Unquestionably, they will be worried about it. But the interesting thing was, I think Mike Coop said prices will come down 10%. What does he mean in Sainsbury's? Are they going to be the same price as Asda? Are they going to line up? I mean, there's a lot of questions to answer here in terms of price.
Well, they've said they'll keep the two businesses trading under the current brand names. Now, if you were in charge, would you do that, or would you?
But he won't either, in my opinion. It's my opinion.
Right.
Over 3 years, 4 years, there'll be one brand. There'll be one head office. There'll be lots of job losses. The synergies will come through.
Because that's the whole point of it is to save money.
Exactly. And so I just think this is all a bit window dressing right now. In the long game, one brand and one company.
And store closures, Natalie, because we've been reporting how over the last few years that they've just invested too much, basically. They've overexpanded.
They did, and they said this morning that there wouldn't be any store closures. But of course, that will be a requirement from the regulatory commission, because they both went into this agreement with the understanding that there'd have to be a significant number of store disposals. And also, I think it's somewhat of an admission of the oversupply of retail space that we have on the high street. So in a sense, it's not such a bad thing for them to dispose of these stores.
Interesting to see where it'll all be in 10 years. Thanks both very much indeed.